Hi, insurance baker. Really sorry about what happened earlier. I thought my audio was okay. Not knowing I had issues with it. In the comments, if you can hear me, let me know before I continue more on this. Let me know if you can hear me. Just leave me a comment if you can hear me. Thank you all so much for your time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you so much. Okay, if you can hear me, just leave me comments as you are joining the live stream. If you can hear me, leave me a comment. If you can hear me, leave me a comment. Let me know if you can hear me. Thank you very much for joining in. So I just want to to do a quick introduction. Of course, my name is Susan SSSAN, and I'm the host of Susie's Cakes Recipes. In previous weeks, I started a live stream section that I titled Moments of Truth, and I've also been talking about baking as a career, baking and baking as science, and I started taking my time to talk about the ingredients we have in baking generally, all the ingredients in baking. So I started with flour. This week I talked about these items. Please, if you are joining the live stream and you can hear me, please and please, if you can hear me. So I talked about sugar. I talked about the roles each of these items plays in our baked treats. So today I'm going to be talking about fats in general, like fat in all its glory, in all its fat and the role it plays. When you're fat, if you're not a new baker, or if you're not if you're not a novice, if you're not just being introduced into baking, if you are not a layman, you know that fat, yeah, solid fat can be liquid fat, but I'm just going to go down to the basic from the scratch so that I carry everybody along, because I promised from the beginning of this live stream that I was going to carry everybody along. So just want to do that now. So just join the live stream and you can hear me, and you can hear me, please just leave me a comment. Let me know if you can. So fat in all its glory. One of the major roles fat plays in our baking treat is that it makes your baking treat, your baking rather, tender and moist. That is one of the major roles your fat does in your baked treat. It makes your baked treat moist. What it means is that fat gluten development. That is just simply what it means. It slows down gluten development. Please are just joining me and you can leave me a comment so that I know that I'm carrying everybody along. Yes, it's breaking. It's breaking because network. It's breaking. It's breaking because of network. Network is bad, bad, bad. Sorry about that. I'm trying to live stream between my channel and Facebook page, so it's breaking. Sorry about that. So I think yes, I think you can hear now. Thank you very much. I was talking about fat, and I said fat slow and gluten development. If you join my previous live stream where I talked about flour, I talked about sugar. Gluten is not you, because I've actually talked about what gluten is, like protein and all that. So fat slows down the gluten development as a barrier between protein and water. What this simply means is by the time you are beating fat, let's butter for instance, into your cake batter as an example, it kind of made the development of the gluten slow, unlike unlike when you are, should I call it creaming? Unlike when you're using like a learning agent like baking powder or baking soda. So it slows down the gluten development not as fast as it's supposed to be. Then fat also shortens gluten strand, shortens it. It doesn't hasten the process, it shortens it. So that when you get something, I bake a cake or I made pies and it's moist, it's tender. That is just the rule of your butter, your fat. That's just the rule of baked treat. It makes your baked treat tender and moist. Another major rule of fat is that it gives this particular richness and flavor to your baked treat. Let me this way. Let me look at this way. If you see a recipe that calls for an increase in fat. A recipe that calls for an increase in fat. The network is breaking because it's very poor this afternoon. So okay, and if you see a recipe, and it has an increase show of fat or other item is increased, the result is that you're going to have a treat that is that has a luxurious taste, an executive taste that is it's going to taste better because fat because of that increase. It's going to be more tender, it's going to be more moist. So that's fat adds sweetness, it adds flavor to your baked treat. And that's what fat does it for treat. I said it matters. It is not only when you add baking soda or baking powder into your treat that it right proves. Also, when you add when you use butter and use sugar in your baked treat, definitely it's going to increase in volume. That's what I mean by uh, leaven agents. Increase in volume. This is just what it does. Now this works. Like when I was talking about sugar, I said sugar leavens your baked treat or your treat in two ways: outside heat and when it's in your oven. What I meant was that when your baked treat gets to the oven, sugar does its work. When it gets into the oven, it also does another work. Same thing with butter. Before you place your into the oven, if you're making cakes, you're going to use a creaming method or a rubbing method or a mixing method that will require you to cream your butter and sugar. To require you cream butter and creaming your sugar. So what does this? The creaming of butter and sugar increases the volume of your batter. That is, that creaming creates pockets, air pocket into your batter. That's what the creaming does. When you cream your butter and sugar together, it creates air, expand the volume of batter, like make it increase. That's why some recipes do beat sugar and butter. This is flour, is light. They just try to tell you to incorporate air in your batter. It's as simple as that. Incorporate air pockets into your batter. Don't do the mistake of seeing butter and drink as the same thing. No, they're quite different. But when we go into the types of fats, I'll get to explain that. So what I was trying to explain is by the time your gets in contact with sugar and it's being creamed together to introduce us to hair pockets. Yes, I just want to talk about the types of fats we have. Definitely, like I said, if you are not new to baking, it will not be new to you. But let me just assume to someone who is just been introduced into the baking world. So we have two types of fats. We have the solid fats and we have the liquid fats. They are different, very different. Now the solid fat can be melted to a liquid form, but by the time it cools down and you want to make it solidified form, it can't. And then when you use solid fat that is not melted in its form to bake, and then use that same solid fat with the same measurement in a melted oil to bake, the texture is different. The taste is going to be different. The end product is going to. What I mean is, if I have a recipe that asks you to use butter as if as an example of solid fat, I have to use butter as an example of solid fat to bake, and I decide, oh, let me go ahead and melt my butter before using it. You're going to end up with a different texture, a different taste, a different outcome. So that's the reason why I usually say stick to it. If your recipe tells you use butter, without melt and use butter, just go ahead and use it. In our own Nigerian culture or Nigerian market, let me use Africa as a whole, we tend to substitute butter and margarine for one another. Prefer to use butter. When people call for butter, I prefer to use rather because butter here is quite expensive and they always come in this small packaging. And if you're having something to do with 1.5 kg and you have to buy butter that comes in 220 gram, multiply that cost and everything. And then sometimes they're very difficult to find. So this is where I'm going to talk about and solid fat. One example is butter. You've been hearing me mention it from the onset of this live stream. Solid fat, butter is an example of solid fat. Now, I usually tell my on-site students, my new students, are just coming into the baking world. I usually tell them one thing, that one major difference, one visible difference between margarine and butter is where I get them. Butter can't get butter in the regular market. We get your margarines. What you see that is being kept in the regular market, hanged, placed in buckets, kept in a cool, dry place, in cartons, in stores. They are all margarine, form of margarine, brands of margarine. They're not butter. Butter can only be kept in the freezer section. So that's the reason why most baking stores are not going to have butter when you ask them for it. They'll give him a drink. If you go to a baking store and butter, they'll just end up giving him a drink because they'll feel that it's about getting a drink. But if you know what you want, you know that getting butter in our own Nigerian markets, or in African markets as a whole, you have to go to malls like ShopRite, you have to go to big baking stores to get them. So this is one of these simple difference between butter and visibility. How you can get them, they're quite different. So I usually say, do not call for substituting butter with margarine. Don't do them. I love using butter for my bread pastry because the difference is always very clear. If you make cookies with as small as cookies are, if you make butter and you make another set with margarine, you will fall so much in love with cookies made with butter and that those made with margarine. It taste is always very different. So now I'm going to be practical. I'm going to be more practical to tell you another role of butter in some visible items. If you've baked before, I'll tell you the role of butter in some of the things you've baked. Let's look at cake batter, for instance. We have muffins, and cake batter has different methods. So to just talk about I'm going to talk about mixing method for to go with creamy method, for instance. Yes. By the time you're beating butter into your sugar, by the time I'm beating them together, like I said at the beginning, it's going to create what I call air pockets. It's going to create air pockets. That air pocket that is creating is going to add volume. It's like something that is expanding. If you look at your recipe, a regular creaming method recipe, the recipe will you that you should add your egg one at a time. Once your butter and sugar, once they are creamy, once they are fluffy, once make sure it's creamy and fluffy, the next is going to tell you is to add your egg one at a time. What this simply does is to allow that created by your egg to fill the air pocket. You know, I told you that when you create your butter and sugar together to create air pockets. So this egg into it one at a time and creaming that egg going to in those air pockets, like seal them up. Let's preserve that air pocket. Let's preserve it. Excuse me. So this is what that this is the process. This is what happens when butter and sugar are together, the egg are added. This is what happens during the creaming method. That's the role it plays in the creaming method. So, like I said, the creaming method of beating butter and sugar together to a fluffy creates air pockets, increases the volume of your batter. It increases the volume of your batter. This air pocket increases the volume of batter. Then, when eggs are added one after the other, this egg liquid, this egg liquid that is added fills up this air pocket. So that is where butter works in this particular creaming method. If you have been following my recipes too, excuse me, you know I usually love working with all in one method. I love working with all in one method. Like I love working. So I'm trying to see a comment. I'm trying to see comments. Okay. So I love working with all in one method, like one bowl method. Place all your items together in bowl and just go ahead and whip and whip. What now? You will say that you might ask that okay when I use a creamy method, This is exactly what butter does. This is the role butter plays. How will butter still play this role when I use the all-in-one method? It's very simple. By the time you're doing one method, you're not wasting time. The all-in-one method is like time, cutting the time frame. If for instance you're supposed to put your butter and sugar and then add it to be for instance like 15, by the time you are doing the all-in-one method, that's mixing that time frame is going to be cut short to 5 minutes or 7 minutes, depending on what you're using. If you're using a hand mixer, it's going to be reduced to 7 minutes. If you're using a stand mixer, 5 minutes, it's reduced. So you're not overworking your batter, you're not overworking anything. That's the reason why I prefer doing all in one method. It cuts the time frame is cut, it reduces stress and all that. But please, if your recipe does not call for all in one method, don't go ahead and use all in one method. Don't go ahead and use all in one method. If your recipe calls for olive method, then good and fine, go ahead and use it. But if not, just stick to your recipe. I usually say stick to your recipe. I'm trying to reply to a comment now. You said it's breaking. Network is bad. Sorry about that. Network is bad. Let's see, is bad. I'm fixing that now. That's the problem with live stream across different destinations. Doing a live stream with Apple can and you, so I understand why network is just misbehaving. Really sorry about that. So now I'm going to talk about I talked about the role of butter, the way butter reacts when you use the creaming method. Yes. And I'm going to talk about how or the role butter plays when you use the all-in-one method. I've talked about that. I'm going to talk about the role butter plays again when we use one particular method that is peculiar to pies, to crust, to flaky pastries. Yeah. So let me explain what I mean. You made pie before. If you made like meat pies, if you made like tarts, if you made like some cookies recipe, even scones, you made these recipes before. You discover that the mixing method is quite different. The mixing method for them is quite different. They mix here. Use of what I call the rub in method. Rub in method. What this mean is instead of creamy method where you method just require to get your flour, pour your butter, especially frozen butter. The butter there is also frozen or very cool. In fact, my meat pie recipe, I grate like because frozen butter to my butter into my flour so that you have chunks. So you have small chunks of butter inside the flour. And what does this do? It doesn't make you overwork you. I usually tell people that you do not need pastry dough. You don't need them. You don't need you don't need it. You have to work with them carefully as if you are pampering a baby. When it comes to pastry, as if you are pampering a baby, you don't need it. The why you don't need it is because if you over need your pastry dough, you're going to with tough dough. You overwork the gluten, stress the pastry dough, all that. I usually do my pastries on cold levels. Like my bowl is cold. My I don't use mixer. My bowl is cold. My liquid are very cold. And my butter is frozen. Absolutely frozen. Frozen. Not cold, but frozen. I have to grate it inside it. This creates very unique taste. Something I cannot do. Now, you might say, okay, fine. If I cream my butter, I introduce into my bar. How does air pockets get introduced into my dough? Pastry dough, for instance, you gas into your flour when you're making pastries for the rubbing method. What you're doing is you're using excuse me, you're using to seal up the flour particles, like particles, and using this butter that you are grating and mixing into your flour. You're using that to seal up the particles of the flour, so that by the time you add any other liquid like your egg and your water or your milk, depending on the recipe you're trying to recreate. By the time you're add any other liquid, adding it, the molecules that has already been, or the particles that have already been sealed by the butter, kind of protect your flour, protect dough from getting over mixed. I don't know if you understand exactly what I'm saying. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. What I mean is, by the time you make your by the time I'm making your pastries dough, for instance, you add your butter in your flour, either by grating or you just add. Then by the time you add your butter, you then that butter you added has molecules. These molecules seal up the particles of your flour, seals it up. By the time you add your other items, your liquid items, especially your egg and your milk, basic liquid item, these particular particles that has already been sealed will not be affected. So then when you now that butter, that treat, that dough, rather, when you take that dough, your fillings, let me use meat pie for instance, meat pies for instance. If you bake meat pie, if you want to bake meat pie, your dough, you add your fillings, and then place this pies on your baking tray, and then you put this pie even put it into your oven. What is going to happen is, by the time this get into your oven, that butter that has sealed the flour party is now going to melt. It's going to melt. It's going to melt and expand. That's the reason why the size of your pies that you place into the oven is different from the size that comes out of your oven. It simply means water in your treats, in your pies, for instance, has already expanded and created a volume. Why I tell people, if I see your recipe, your pastry recipe, it has baking powder inside of it. There's nothing you're going to tell me that's going to make me eat that pastry. Nothing, nothing. And I will know. I will know from just that recipe. I'll know the level of baking. I'll know your level of baking rather. If I see your pastry that has baking powder, your pastry has baking powder, especially when I'm making puff pastries and it has baking powder, I'll know immediately your baking knowledge. I'll know the level you fall to. Things like that are unnecessary, especially when you're making pies. So what makes that pie to rise is that butter. That's why I always tell people to don't overwork your pastry. Just mix it as if you're ramping them. And then by the time they get into the oven, the butter, the flour particles will allow these pastries to expand. Simple as that. It's very, very simple. I hope you understood something from me, took something. And like I said, I'm really sorry about the audio issues. My next live stream or subsequent live streams, I'm going to up that issue. I'll fix up the issues. Then okay, okay. I got a message now. Thank you very much. The truth now is just the first this is just the first solid fat I've talked about butter. I talked about it plays fat plays generally, then the raw butter plays in things like your cake batter and in things like your pastries using different mixing method. There are also other forms of solid fats, and I'm going to talk about them in subsequent videos. So I don't want to make my live streams too long and too boring because I've discovered in my years of teaching my students, and we're doing this science baking when we talk about each ingredient that we add into our baked treat. It always sounds very boring, and sometimes they're always very tired writing notes, right? Even when we do something like a soft copy of the notes, they can't make the live stream like that. I want to take it step by step. That's the reason why I'm taking each item step by step. So I hope you pick up something. I hope you learn something. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you. And hopefully see you next time. Bye.